Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch. This is Policy Talks, brought to you every month by Williamson, Inc., our county chamber of commerce. We have got a lively crowd here at Columbia State this morning. I'm trying to quiet them down, but it's not working. But that's awesome that everybody comes and visits for a while. We've got the free coffee. Better deal than McDonald's because our coffee is free out here and it comes from McDonald's. So we invite everybody that wants to come and mix and mingle and have coffee at 7:30 every Friday, last Friday of the month. The coffee's served at 7:30. We go on the air at 8 o'clock. So we've got a TV audience joining us from Comcast Channel 3, WCTV. Thank you to Creed Henderson and his crew for that. And also radio audience on WAKM, and we appreciate WAKM getting us on the air, Tom Lawrence and his crew. And I think we're live streaming. I never have totally understood that process, but we're on the World Wide Web by way of YouTube and live streaming, and we are famous this morning. But panelists this morning, our Williamson County Mayor, Rogers Anderson. We're pleased to have you with us this morning, Rogers. Beside him, we've got Phoebe Riley, who is the Budget Director, Budget and Purchasing Manager, I think is what I saw on the website. You'll correct me in a minute, Phoebe. And County Planning Director, Mike Madison. Is that correct, Mike? Mike is the point person on the county's effort to review and revise the urban growth boundary plan that I was a part of helping form in 2001. So we'll look forward to the progress report on that. Rogers, you gave a State of the County speech back the end of last month. Had a few interesting things in it that I wanted to unpack a little bit this morning. But before we do that, you've been mayor now how long?
I'm going into, well, first of all, thanks for having me on here and everyone being here present. But I started off in 2002 as mayor and county commissioner in 1986. So I'm 35 years going at this.
Not too many things you don't know about county politics and county government at this point. Probably nothing you don't know about county government. And you also served another very important role for the last several years. You turned it over recently to Diane Giddens, but we share a little interest in the Williamson County Fair. And give us an update. How did it do this year?
Well, you are correct, and thank you for you and many others, Judy Hayes, they were involved in creating the fair back in '02, and so we just had I think it actually got started in '05, '04, and you were the chairperson of that for a couple of years and helped us get it formulated and going. We're somewhere around 210,000 people that participate in the fair, and it's well received. Struggled a little this year because of the weather, the rain, but overall, financially, we haven't finished up all of it. I think it's going to be a good fair.
Never forget that first year I was scared to death nobody would show up. And first Sunday of the fair, we had a non-denominational church service there in the arena. And I was standing out there watching the traffic, and it was all backed up on I-65, and I was trying real hard to not show my smile that was that we had a traffic jam out there. But
I don't remember. Were you preaching that Sunday?
No, they didn't come to hear me. Absolutely not. But it was a good-looking fair this year, and I understand it was a lot of fun from what I hear from the kids. So we one of the things you spent a fair amount of time on the 26th was the importance of our public school system. Chamber's very interested in the success of our schools because that is what brings a lot of people here. But tell us from your seat, why the schools are so important and why they're so good here.
Well, great question. Probably be better addressed by our school superintendent who's here. I'm sure I hope our message similar when I give my side and then he gives his side. It goes back about 30 or 40 years ago when the county commission and school board at that time decided to make public education number one and funded accordingly for that. I tell this story, late 80s, early 90s, we built 4 elementary schools. We put in 4 different districts. There's 24 county commissioners. And it didn't take me very long to figure out to get anything passed, you had to have 13 votes. So we put 4 schools in 4 different districts so we could pick up at least 13 votes. And we built 4 elementary schools. If my memory serves me correct, they were Bethesda, Trinity, Lipscomb, and I'm drawing maybe Grassland. And those first 4 schools, Dave, cost us, for the people here in the audience that are in construction, all 4 of them were less than $25 million. We don't do an elementary school now less than 35 for one, and more like 40. So, and high schools now are approaching the $90 million range. So, through the efforts of the superintendent throughout the years and carries on today, the emphasis has always been that let's do the things that are important behind the scenes. The county commissioners, which you've got a couple here in the audience, fund public education. Now, we're always going to argue back and forth about financial side of it, but 85% of their budget is made up of personnel and programs and things like that. It's not about bricks and mortar. But when you're building schools, about one school now, we're doing probably one school about every 20 to 24 months. We've got 2 to open up here on September the 5th. They're a little late getting open, but Jason has seen that they're opening up. So this will make, I think, 52 schools that we have funded. Now, you say all that, that's the construction side, and it's all the programs we offer, but it's really those men and women that we call teachers that are in the classroom that can get that job done. And it's also about our parents. There's no democracy in our county about your children going to school and public education. A lot of our children go to private school, which is fine. Absolutely, we have some of the finest private schools, but we're about 43,000 children, boys and girls now.
Phoebe may have to answer this question, but what's the payroll on a new school?
You want to try it, or you want Jason to try?
I think that's a Jason question.
Jason, I'll visit with you in a few minutes. But schools are expensive, and you got to have a real commitment to it to make it work.
You got to have a passion, and then, once you reach that, whether it's business, and, I was small business for 25 years. I know you're in small business. You have to have the passion for what you do, and then once you get there, you got to have that continued passion to get to and to stay there. And I think in the speech I said that Williamson County was number 3. That's one rating agency, but in my mind, the programs they offer and the success, the turnout, the scholarships, you just name it. I talked to one of my grandsons over the week, and most of our high schools that are playing football this time of year, if they can play in this hot weather, they're playing each other. There was a time, my children, the boys, they were traveling to all the different schools, but I'd say 6 or 7 ball games. And look what Page and the schools have done. Page used to be out there in the rural area that, had 600 people to it, and now it's one of the largest high schools we've got, very successful, good people moving out there.
We probably should spend a whole program on schools, Jason. So we'll talk more about that in a future policy talks. But a couple of the other things you mentioned in your speech that I wanted to drill into a little bit. But an innovation center campus over next to Franklin High School. Got a $15 million grant, I presume, from the state for that.
That's correct.
What is an innovation center campus?
So many people would know that all from Claude Yates. This college, this Columbia State, for many, many years was located on the same campus as Franklin High School. And so through the efforts of the legislation led by Charles Sargent, this campus became a reality of being able to locate it here. And just next door to that was our animal center. And we built a new animal center. The county commission authorized me to sign some documents to give the animal center location. I think it's about 7 or 8 acres, if I'm not mistaken. And so this new center they're trying to get to raise money for, take with the grants to get up and have a two maybe 3-story building. We'll cover everything. Dave, from they're trying to get, from the healthcare side, nurses and health tech folks, aviation. We need to offer that to our students if they want to go into that. And certainly the traditional models of plumbing and heating, all of these skill sets for our boys and girls and people that decide, I just don't believe I want to go on to college. But you and I know later in life, you still have to have a skill set and to be able to feed your family and work in a respectable way. I'm sure Jason can cover a lot more of the details about it, but from the county commission level and our level, instead of offering that as surplus land or keeping it in inventory we've got, we decided it was better used for the schools to get this innovation center up and going.
Two other things I want to unpack with you. One, $46 million American Rescue Plan grant. Sounds like a big portion of that's going to broadband, enhancing broadband services across the county. I know Chuck Barber is here with us from Middle Tennessee Electric, and they're involved in this. But how much of the county is that going to cover? Is it going to finish the broadband coverage for the county, or because for small business people that work from home, that's a real important.
So we learned during the pandemic that so many of our boys and girls couldn't access from home their lesson plans. We also know that I think Matt's latest numbers were 25% in entrepreneurs, or maybe higher now, of in the high 20s. And when men and women are working from home, they need broadband. It was about that period of time we did some surveys. We got with Middle Tennessee Electric. Chuck was involved in that. And United Communications, Middle Tennessee Electric purchased United, and so it was a great partnership. And they're attaching, for the most part, to the poles that Middle Tennessee Electric has. And it was also brought to our attention at that time in some of the consulting and survey work we did, we were having a lot of dropped calls. When there's certain places on I-65 South, right in front of Concord Road, if you're driving down through there, you'll have a dropped call. On Breezy Hill, many other areas. And so the public health side of that and the public safety side of that said, we can't afford that. We have an ambulance service that relies very heavily on having connectivity. And so we combine both of them. Government at oftentimes is very slow in getting things done, but we immediately, through Mike's area up on the 4th floor of the administrative complex, we completely have rewritten our small cell rules and policy. We have contracted with a minority ownership of a lady. It's called Tower Communication. And so we're utilizing facilities the county owns, landfill, working with the schools for some joint ventures, Parks and Recreation, to put some towers. And so we're spreading those out to date. We've got about 5 or 6 of those. We'll have more that we can have better communication. Broadband is part of that. For the most part, broadband covers through United. It is overseen through this American Rescue Plan. It's coming up from Chapel Hill, goes up to College Grove, kind of around Triune, and it swings across the southern part, Bethesda, back up through Fairview. This week, we had a meeting that there's some additional funds and some additional information that's been put out by the state and by the feds to better enhance, fill in those donut holes. For an example, up in the Grassland community that we have up in the 8th and 9th District, those areas mostly are served by other carriers other than United. Maybe the cable side of Comcast, maybe AT&T, and all of these help to fill in those spots we need. So we leverage some rescue fund money. We applied for some grants to the state, and Chuck, we got about $20 million and that's a lot of money, even to someone that's building schools, but it doesn't go very far. And so we'll go back for more money from the feds and from the state to try to fill in those spots along the way. The problem with most cable, whether you're putting towers in or you're putting broadband under the ground or on the poles, the biggest part of it is behind the scenes. It's called engineering. And so you acquire the right to do that. You've got the money to do that, but it may be a year and a half. But I really think in the next couple of years you'll see some major differences. And with us having the 5-acre rule in the unincorporated part of the county and people moving there, that's very important for our community and our citizens.
Is that going to cover 80% of the county with broadband?
Eventually, yes, but it won't all be done by this $20 million. There's no way.
Other thing you talked about a little bit is the population projections for Williamson County, in spite of zoning everything to 5-acre minimum lots, is projected to double between now and 2040. So instead of 250,000, going to have 500,000 people in this county. And I wondered how accurate those projections were when I heard you say that. So I went back to your State of the County speech in 2012 to see what the population projections were then. And the projections then were by 2020 we'd have 226,000 people in Williamson County. How much did we miss that? Not much. So I was a little skeptical of those projections, but folks, here's the evidence.
So we're going to change your name to Doubting Dave.
Probably appropriate, but but how do you plan for another doubling of population? I mean, we got enough traffic already, don't we?
Yeah.
Diane's going to.
Well, I think
that.
people have, and because I know you've got other topics you want. I could talk all day about growth projections and, at our best guesstimates, and we do things to kind of not stop it, but slow it down a little bit. But there's great minds that look at these numbers. In Williamson County, for the first time in a long time, we're not the fastest growing county. That's Rutherford County, and that is one distinction I am glad that their county mayor and county commission has. They can have that label of being the fastest growing. But I think it's important to realize one of the things that so many people have said, how do you do these things? Well, you do it through collaboration with your cities and your counties. It's not an effort just strictly by the county. It's not an effort strictly by Franklin, or we've got Brentwood represented here today. All of us working together make this a community, Dave. And when you're talking about growth, growth traditionally will occur always within your cities. That's where you have the infrastructure, or should have the infrastructure. You go in the unincorporated area, we're on septic tanks. You know that. And the density is not allowed on the septic tanks. You just can't get it done. Now, some of the areas are going into different systems that we have that would allow more people to live on the land, but nothing like what you have in Franklin and Spring Hill and Thompson Station and certainly Nolensville, which is one of the fastest growing cities that we've got. So you do these things from a planning perspective to hold the beauty of your unincorporated land. And that land has a heavy, high price on it now. A lot of farmers, their 401k is in their land, and I get that. But there's a statistic, I don't know if you're going to bring it out, and that came out in the speech. We have in this state a green belt. That's for 15 acres of real estate that you or I may own. And if you use it in some way for agriculture, that could be row crops to cutting hay, whatever it may be, you qualify for that. And you go to Karen Parrish's office and you fill out the paperwork and you get a very good reduction on your land and land prices for Williamson County.
Not too many farmers miss that.
Not many farmers miss that, that is for sure. 57% of our land in Williamson County is still in the Greenbelt. So that's through planning.
Rural character is intact so far. We could talk about that for a long time, and I'd like to. I honestly would like to, but
can I just say one more thing before I know
you're the boss. So.
I'm not the boss, but I think as you look down the road, maybe we've missed an opportunity. But I grew up ag, and I know you're ag. We may have missed an opportunity in our county. We can still do a lot. We can be city farmers. We can have our small tractors, and we can put our gardens in, and we can enjoy that. But I think across the state, we have got to figure out a way to balance the growth that we're having in our state. This is out my wheelhouse with the agricultural side. As glad as I am to see jobs, and for me, it's always been about jobs. But you go down into West Tennessee where they're building this blue oval, great company, Ford. They took 250,000 acres out of the agriculture side. So we've got to learn to balance that side all across our state and from an agriculture side. Ag is still one of the biggest producers for revenue in this state, and it's beef, and we have a lot of horse. We have no swine in Williamson County anymore. I only know of one small dairy, and that's out on Arnold Road. This is Commissioner of Agriculture, and Commissioner Hatcher. And you start thinking about what our county came from 50 years ago when you and I moved here in the 80s. We've gobbled that up. Now, we've got great revenue. Our penny generates some of the highest cost revenue. We're growing $1.5 billion to $2 billion every 15 to 18 months. But that ag side is still very important to this state, and we're slowly, it just has to be a blend. The Farm Bureau, I'm sure, is very involved and engaged in this, and I hope we do address that.
Well, there's still a couple of us that have cows in the city of Franklin, so we'll try to help out as far as that goes. So. Phoebe Riley, our budget director for the county. And Phoebe, tell us a little bit about how long you've been there, where you were before becoming budget director, and what experiences prepared you for working with Rogers on these sorts of things.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. This is my first opportunity to come to the Chamber Talks. So it's nice having him here to always buffer. So that's great. I have been with the county approaching my 15th year. So I have been a little over a year now. I started in last July as budget director. Have been in multiple positions throughout the county, well, within the finance department, obviously, over the last 15 years. Prior to that, I was with the Comptroller's office back when Comptroller Snodgrass is when I started with the office, and I was with County Audit. So I became very familiar with Williamson County as an auditor of their financial records. And to be honest, it was great. We always were very anxious to see who was assigned to Williamson County, not only because it was close for a lot of us, just because we knew the position they were in. We knew that it was a great deal of work because of size and volume and numbers, but we always knew that it was maintained well and the integrity that came with that. And thankfully, I'm now a part of it.
David Coleman did a good job back then, I think, didn't he?
David Coleman did an excellent job. David is the one who actually hired me and brought me over to the county. And we have tried and always tried to continue and uphold his standards. He was a great mentor.
Got family here in Williamson County, I believe.
Outside, I will have to admit, I do not live in Williamson County. I am right across the county line to Davidson. However, I'm close enough that my 17-year-old son can throw a baseball across the line. I cannot at this point, but I am right across the line. I do. I have two children. My youngest is 17, a senior this year. So we're going through that process. And my oldest daughter has just graduated from college, and she's just returning back to the area. So, but it's been a great place and a great place to build a career.
Got a $794 million budget for this upcoming year. And as I understand it, you're specifically responsible for a portion of it called the general fund. Is that right? Or do you have to watch every dime that Jason spends as well in the school side? How pervasive are your tentacles out into that process?
The county side is responsible for the general fund as well as the highway, solid waste, debt service. We carry the debt on the county side, and we are responsible for maintaining that. The schools maintain general purpose school, their cafeteria fund, and their extended school. The school budget does make up of that $794 million. They make up about 65, just the general purpose school makes up about 65%. But Rachel Farmer is the assistant superintendent of finance, and she does an excellent job with that side. So I have no concerns until she tells me I need to be concerned.
I just realized that my numbers don't add up that I got in my notes. You'll have to help me here. But local taxes make up about $90 million of the revenue, is something I saw somewhere, but that's not near $794 million. How did I mess that up?
Property tax is the majority of our revenue. That is just a fact. We do receive state funds through other taxes such as business tax, sales tax. So we do have some state revenue that also makes up those numbers.
Silence your phone, Rogers.
So we do also pull from, we have built up over the last few years a very healthy fund balance in each of our funds, and that has offset. This year we proposed a salary increase that we are very proud of for our employees, and we were able to pull those funds rather than having to generate additional revenue. We were able to pull those funds from our fund balance to help offset the difference in those costs.
Still can't make my numbers add up, but one thing I noticed is that I guess it's in the general fund, there was a projection a year ago that you were going to collect about $83.7 million. You actually collected about a little over $90 million. What happens to that money that's over budget? Where does it go?
I think you were referring to our privilege or our property tax revenue. Yes, we actually budget. We do not budget 100% on that number. Obviously, we have to take into consideration the possibility of delinquency, so we do not budget at 100%. So therefore, we are always hopeful that we become very close to that 100% mark. And historically, we've been very privileged and received approximately about 97, so that's why you're seeing a great deal more than what is budgeted. Those funds go back into our fund balance, as I mentioned earlier, for us to pull when there is a need, if there's something that comes up, or if we do need to offset those revenues the next year. We have those monies built up as our backstop to help fund. It also prepares and allows us to maintain a cash balance that we can generate, and we can run off for 3 to 5 months if we had to before those property tax revenues came in and the collections began.
One of the things that Rogers is rightfully proud of is the AAA rating that I think Williamson County has achieved under his government, his leadership. How long ago did we receive that? Several years ago. But what do the rating agencies, I guess I'll turn this around, what would cause us to lose that rating? In other words, what are they looking at as far as the money you're managing and so forth? How do they rate us, AAA?
That AAA rating goes a long way, as it is stating that we are at the highest credit worthiness. So that is something that is looked at, obviously, when we go to bond market. Interest rates, we are able to receive a better interest rate. Also, we have generated a large increase in people who are actually just bidding on our debt, which says a lot. I mean, if you go to bond market and you have about 12 to 13 people bid rather than 4, then obviously, again, that makes that more competitive. They are looking at overall economic standing. If we are, again, credit worthy, if we have the finances and ability, and we maintain our expenses, and that we are very low on their radar for any type of default. And so that goes a long way.
So, again, hopefully my numbers are right, but obviously not all of them are. The debt service for this upcoming year is about $50 million out of the almost $800 million going toward at the general debt service. Then there's another rural debt service that's going for paying for schools.
Let me jump in here so she can kind of get her head clear on giving you the direct answer. So nobody would set a business up the way the government set up. Let me just go right up front and say that. So schools come forth and request a new school or two. And so the county commissioners voted up or voted down. So they want to borrow $100 million for a school or for a single, one school or a bunch of schools, or additions on the school. The schools don't pay the debt back. It's not like you and I, we borrow money to build a house or do some business venture, we have to pay it back. Schools don't have to pay it back. So that's off their ledger. It's on the county commission side, which is what Phoebe has to do, is to manage that debt. Now, she said 65% of the operating budget is for the total budget. Operating side is about 65% for schools. It doesn't count the debt service. Doesn't count the mortgage, in another way to look at it. And so that can get upwards of 5 and 6% of somebody has to pay the bills. And when you're borrowing money, and Moody's is rating you, and by the way, Brentwood and Franklin, both are AAA rated. We're probably the only county in the state that's got that many cities with a county rating of that high. And so that's a real plus to have money in the bank. The final thing I want to touch on that is that one of the reasons you have to have money in the bank, when you have a major hurricane or tornado or whatever comes through your area, and we have to repair, go in there and do the work to fix that up, you're going to turn that, you may get approved for TEMA funding, which is federal funding, or, TEMA or FEMA funding, but you may not get that money back for a year and a half or two. So you've got to have money in the bank to keep your operations going. I know the business you're in, a year to year and a half, you wouldn't stay in business very long. Now
I was really going to ask her an easy question, but you got in a lot deeper than I meant to. But
sorry.
No, appreciate the detail there. No, what I noticed when I was looking at the budget numbers, it looked like the budget number for last year was $60 million. This year it's only $50 million. Is that correct? Number one, and how did you slice $10 million off the debt service in 1 year?
First of all, yes, it is correct, or he would not have me here. So we have some other problems if it is not. But yes, we have paid off, a lot of that is just paying off the debt. We had a lot of bonds that were maturing and that we were able to pay off. The other thing is, this past fiscal year, we were able to contribute about $15 million out of our education impact fee money. And that was $15 million that we didn't have to go back to market to bond and to go further in debt. So we always try to offset, obviously, either through a refinancing or using that education impact fund that has been so beneficial to offset, to reduce how much we have to go back to borrow the following year.
Tell us about the education impact fees. Some of us may not know what that is and where it's coming from and how long that's been around.
Sure. The education impact fee, we began in March of 2017. So we have been collecting those funds. That is to help offset and mitigate new residents coming in, new growth, to offset the growth that is associated with the school system. Those fees go on to new construction. That is a fee that Mike's office helps generate and calculate and keep us up to date on. Those funds go in, and then we can then use those towards debt to help mitigate and offset the cost of additional schools, anything addition for growth-related processes. We have collected a little over $122 million to date. We have allocated a little over $64 million, so a little over half of that we have used. We still have another 50 some odd million so far to use that we can start allocating toward future projects. And as you know, those keep coming down faster sometimes than we can turn around. So that has been a big help and a big asset to the county starting that.
I might footnote that we're the only county in the state that has that ability. That this went to the state Supreme Court. We won the case. And it is the only, every county around us and throughout have tried to get this, and that has been blocked by the legislators. But we have it vested into that now, and that is saved. If you just took her number and you divided by, what does a penny generate? You got a tax rate of, divide that into that. That's a lot of property tax that you don't have to do because the county commission voted in 17 to add that on to new growth. That doesn't hurt when a new person moves into the county. They're impacting our schools, they're impacting our roads, they're impacting, you name it. And so at the time they move in here, it's paid at the permit time. You and I have already paid for that once, and unless you buy a new house, you move up, you don't have to pay it again. It's only on new growth.
Your realtor and builder friends still speak to you?
Yeah, they do, and they supported me last time. Now the out of state guys don't, but the local builders see the value of having something like that, and I get that. But somebody's got to pay it. They'd rather have it on broad base. They'd rather see it passed on to each one of you through your property taxes. But the decision we made and the county made was that we'll pay it at the permit time.
I was a little surprised to see you take the lead on that, but you pushed it through and making a big difference. So,
Well, again, Matt and his team helped. The whole community, every city was bought in. I know we're running out of time. Every city bought into this concept. And when we first put it in, they were very instrumental in helping get this pushed through.
we've got 2 pages of notes now to cover in 10 minutes. So, Mike Madison, you're in charge of a very important process that, again, we haven't been through since 2001, called the Urban Growth Boundary something. And tell us about that process and what you are, well, first of all, tell us what your background is. I do want to know you personally before we start drilling on you too hard, but what's your background as far as the planning and so forth?
Okay, well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Okay, there we go.
Oh, yeah. Now
Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. So I'm one of the unicorns that actually went to high school here in Williamson County. I was in the second graduating class at Brentwood High School, went off to college at UT, and then I spent the first portion of my career in the Carolinas, first in Asheville, then in the Charlotte area, and I got to come home in 2005 to take this job as planning director here with the county. I've got 3 kids that went through Williamson County Public Schools, and they're all actually very productive human beings, which is good. And they're all out of the house, and my wife and I are enjoying being empty nesters.
Right, good deal. And your background in planning, what
Yes, sir.
what got you to be a planning director for Williamson County?
Well, in terms of choosing the profession, you know, I was always fascinated by how cities grow and how areas preserve and augment their character. And so I was kind of drawn to it. I was in planning in Asheville, also in economic development to some degree, being the downtown development director there. So I've been in planning the entire career in some form or fashion.
Tell us about the urban growth boundary process.
Yeah, so
And
you know,
what is the urban growth boundaries?
Yeah, so first, there's been a lot of talk about growth, and we have been growing at a tremendous pace. I'm like Mayor Anderson. I'm glad we're 2 instead of 1 at this point. But that growth, you know, is good and bad. You know, people are coming here for a reason, and those reasons are jobs and schools and extremely high quality of life and the character that we have here that's pretty unique. And that presents some challenges, too, in terms of how to plan for that growth and accommodate that anticipated growth in a way that still preserves what's special about our community. And so the growth plan update that we're part of is wrapped up in that effort to plan responsibly for growth. Back in the late 90s, the state mandated that counties create what's called a growth plan. And that growth plan consists of urban growth boundaries which surround the municipalities. Those are areas that the cities envision growing into at some point during about a 20-year planning horizon. And then rural areas out in the unincorporated county, and within those rural areas, planned growth areas, little communities that were designed to grow quicker and with a higher density than the surrounding rural areas. So that's what the growth plan is. As you know from being a part of the original effort, our growth plan was adopted in 2001, and we're updating that at this point. Each
City, as I understand it, if it's the same process we went through in '01, each city has a representative on a committee or
Yes, sir.
commission. What is it?
There's a coordinating committee, and that's prescribed by state statute that has been established. Mayor Anderson is chair of that committee. Superintendent Golden is on that committee. Chuck Barber was involved in a lot of the informal planning work that led up to that. So there's a coordinating committee that is overseeing that effort.
And then the cities bring their wishes to the committee, and as to what areas they would anticipate adding to their city limits over the next X number of years?
Yeah, that's correct. So each of the 7 jurisdictions, the 6 cities and the county, have been evaluating where growth should occur over the 20 years, based on population projections, available land, infrastructure provision, and that sort of thing. And yes, so each of those jurisdictions will be presenting their proposal for changes to the coordinating committee in the near future. The coordinating committee will hold public hearings. Ultimately, each of the legislative bodies will end up having to approve the plan for it to get adopted.
City of Franklin wants to grow toward the southwest, out toward Thompson Station, and along Columbia Avenue, that direction. They want to grow west and north, just about every direction by a pretty good margin. Rogers, you live out there. That's is that accurate? And then the Mays Creek area, which is 96 East and out that way. So they are wanting to add those areas to the growth boundary as it currently exists. Is that right?
Well, so in the case of Franklin, their growth boundary currently extends, really each direction except for north from their corporate limits. They're growing mostly, actually, kind of southeast in the Goose Creek area, and their proposal is to actually contract some of their growth boundary to the west and a little bit to the southwest, so lose a bit there and pick up some in the Goose Creek area. The Mays Creek area is already in their growth boundary.
Not any major changes other than south and east around the Goose Creek area for Franklin.
Yes, sir, for Franklin.
One of the ways, or one of the highlights you have to ask Dave, and you'll remember this 20 years ago, is when you're talking to Franklin or Brentwood is actually pretty well landlocked from Nolensville, Old Hickory, Davidson County, and Franklin. So you won't see any change to speak of. But Franklin's giving up some land too. So the purpose of the growth plan is to try to hone in on, and we're looking at this in 5-year windows now rather than 20. What happens in 5 years, you can kind of get your arms around that. But 20-year growth pattern, like you said, with the population growth, a lot of that's just wetting your finger and putting it up in the air and hope the wind blows by. But you just have no way of doing that accurately. So you've got some areas that it'll be a tug of war from the residents, and particularly in Thompson Station and Spring Hill, Nolensville. They don't want to be in the city limits, and then others want to be there because the price of the land goes up when you got the services, and it's all about services of what a city can bring to you.
One of the eye-opening things the one thing I remember that was eye-opening about the process in '01 is Mort Stein, who was the county planner at that time, said, folks, plan around drainage basins. That's where the sewers have to run. You don't want to have to run a sewer over a hill. And so we focused on drainage basins. Is that still a factor? Is that something you look at?
Well, I'll say that the provision of infrastructure, sewer being the main one, is a major consideration. And yes, I think to a large degree, the cities have looked at where they can provide sewer without having to do a bunch of pump stations. And so I think yes, that's still a consideration in determining where those go, along with some other factors, but that's one of them.
A couple other quick questions. Is Spring Hill going to jump I-65 and go east as fast as it's been going every other direction?
Spring Hill is proposing to expand their growth boundary both west and east. As Mayor Anderson alluded to, some of the residents don't particularly like that, and there will be a process that kind of sorts that out.
Now, at the time I was involved, every city had a representative on this coordinating committee. Is that still correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And it was a real tug of war, negotiations until everybody kind of got happy.
Some things never change,
Correct.
Dave.
Okay. So it's an ongoing process of everybody kind of working together until they get something that everybody can live with.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, this is my curveball question for you and Rogers. But you passed a 5-acre minimum lot size a couple of years ago, and everybody took a deep breath and said, all right, we've got the county taken care of. You know, we'll always have a rural character. But if the cities annex the rest of the county and zone it 2 units per acre, what have we accomplished with the 5-acre zoning?
Well, if that was the case, then we would have just delayed it. But if you look at the maps, and Mayor Anderson mentioned earlier that over 50% of the county is still in Greenbelt, there's a lot of land that will likely never get annexed. And the county cares a lot about rural character. Our citizens care a lot about rural character, which is a main reason, not the only reason, but a main reason for the zoning change that took place. So, also to answer your question, in order for the cities to expand their growth boundaries and annex, there has to be an amendment to the growth plan, and each jurisdiction, including the county, would have to approve that.
Another interesting factoid that it's almost mind-boggling when you think about it. We're at about 260,000 people. We're predicted to be somewhere around 475 to 500,000 in the year 2045 now. Write that number down. That's the size of Davidson County 10 years ago. Now put that in perspective. And so some of the growth planning we're doing is critical to what we're going to look like in 2045. And internally, each of our cities are doing this. So, we're one side of it. We've got the large piece and the unincorporated area, but there's communities like College Grove, Hillsborough, Leapers Fork, whatever you want to call it, other community, Rudderville, all of these smaller little communities that we got, they do not want to be in those city limits. They like that character. They like that ability to go out. And a bigger issue that we're going to have to face, as all communities, you and I won't, but where we're going to get all this water that we're going to need over the next 20 and 25 years. So Harpeth is certainly not going to supply, so it's got to come out of Nashville. And Brentwood gets all of their water, I think, from up in Nashville. And I don't know exactly how much water Franklin gets, but a lot. That's a big number. And you start looking into that, how are we going to do this? And that's all about planning.
Franklin's got a 48-inch line to the Cumberland, isn't that right, Ms. Ann? I think that's right. But,
a lot of water.
A lot of water. And it'll take that. We planned on talking about capital projects in the new criminal justice area over on Beasley Drive, but
Touch on it.
We're out of time.
Yeah. Touch on it. We are.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Got it. 3 years we have to build a new jail. Our jail's 32 years old. The sheriff's got to have a new workhouse. We need a new juvenile. We're on waivers now for our Jason has quite a few kids to go over and see Judge Guffey all the time. And as the growth comes, you got to have jails and prisons and judges and courtrooms. So we are going to have to build. Nobody wants a jail in their communities. 3 years we did surveys. We're going to have to move that over off from Beasley. We'll build around what we've got to satisfy and meet the needs that we've got to have over the next few years. Very, very large, and will be controversial when we bring it up.
Jason Golden, our county superintendent. You can stay sitting today. The last time I asked you to stand up, I couldn't see you very good. He's 6'9", folks. So, but have we fairly characterized the growth of the schools and how that's being handled? Has that been fairly dealt with this morning?
Very well. We are growing. Our growth, it continues, but it's not as high a pace it's been in past years. We did open our 2 new elementary schools already this year. We projected a little bit later start, but we got them open. The county commission has been pretty wonderful to fund us. Teacher pay and teacher recruiting is really our big issue right now.
How many new students per year are we adding to the system these days?
We don't have our final numbers. We do that the day after Memorial Day. We projected in the somewhere around 500-600 projection for this year. In years past, we've grown by 1,200, 1,300.
You know, I'm a big fan of the Williamson County Schools and the job y'all are doing. We probably ought to have a program exclusively dedicated to our education here soon. So look forward to having more. Dr. Lampley, you've got an able assistant. Mary Beth Challey, stand up here. You're in the audience, you're fair game, folks. But Mary Beth was bursting with excitement this morning about things going on here. And I thought a woman on the street report about how Columbia State's doing would be the great way to end this show today. Tell us what's going on here.
So we started our fall semester just this past Monday, and we are thrilled with the amount of students that have come back on campus to not only take their classes in person, but are hanging out between classes. They are talking with each other, they're eating their lunches, the table that we have outside there for coffee. Yesterday there were 10 students that pulled up around there and they were all eating their lunch together, talking, interacting. It's been wonderful to see that.
It's a real college.
It absolutely is. And we even have classes going on today, so lots of excitement, just a nice vibe that kind of takes us back to the pre-COVID days.
Always makes us feel welcome here. Dr. Lampley, I started to steal your sunshine here, but she was so excited this morning, I had to capture that. But
No, I can appreciate that. She is my sunshine as well.
that's great. We appreciate the hospitality y'all show us here. Mary Beth and Bob Trabowski, is that correct? Trabowski, do all the logistics to make sure this comes together every time, and we really appreciate that. We've got several other people. I'd like to open it up for questions, but we're out of time. It's always a lot of fun to try to pick the brains of these public officials and kind of find out what the backstory is on some of these issues. We probably need to come back and just talk capital projects and planning some more, Mike. It doesn't feel like we really touched the surface this morning. But again, just want to thank everybody that makes this show happen. Obviously, Columbia State is a very important part of it, and this beautiful campus is a perfect site for this effort. Creed Henderson and his crew from WCTV Channel 3, if you've ever watched us on YouTube videos or on Channel 3, he makes us look better than we actually should. Tom Lawrence on WAKM certainly get us out over the air on to their audience. We get a little financial assistance from AT&T due to Dennis Wagner and his crew there. Vanderbilt University and Lynn Maddox, Christine Bradley, we appreciate your participation. Their community relations effort is always here, and we appreciate having them. And the Line Leadership Group, who is our McDonald's franchisee in this area, is responsible for making sure we have coffee. And that's a very important thing to mention here. Not to mention the chamber staff. Matt Largen is the head man there. Jenna Potter was the quarterback on the effort this morning, and Jenna, we appreciate it. Kel McDowell is Leadership Middle Tennessee retreat today. Nancy Conway kind of keeps me plugged into the real news around the county, so I appreciate her helping us do that. Thank you all for being here live this morning. It always makes it better when we have real people here that are curious. I would love to have had more time for questions, but come back and we'll do it again next month. Should be here on September 29th. On a show to be determined. So look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.